Security controls and monitoring. When it comes to security, one of the most important things is knowing how to watch over your systems and catch trouble before it spreads. Technical controls like intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems, SIEMs, and firewalls are the heavy hitters that actively defend your network. They don't just sit there, they're constantly watching traffic and logging suspicious behavior. Understand the difference between preventive controls, which try to stop bad things before they happen, and detective controls, which alert you after something suspicious is already in motion. Learning which tool belongs to which category is half the battle. Threat actors and motivations. Not all attackers are cut from the same cloth. On one end, you've got hacktivists. These folks aren't in it for the money, but instead to make a political or social statements. They might deface a government website or leak documents to push their cause. On the other hand, you've got nation states that engage in cyber warfare or espionage. These are highly skilled, well-funded groups that go after military, economic, or political targets. Know the difference between these two because their motivations and methods are very different. Financially motivated attackers are the most common in real-world situations. Ransomware is a perfect example. Its whole purpose is to lock up your data until you pay up. Understand simpler attack types like smishing. Know your acronyms. At the end of the day, understanding the why behind attacks makes it easier to figure out who is behind them. Cloud and network architectures. Cloud architecture questions can seem intimidating at first, but they really come down to identifying keywords. If you see a company that's keeping some services on premises, but also moving workloads to the cloud, you're looking at a hybrid architecture. Hybrid setups are popular because businesses often need the flexibility of the cloud while still meeting compliance rules for certain critical services. The key here is knowing the differences between cloud buzzwords like hybrid, serverless, and microservices. Networking designs also come into play, especially when it comes to performance and security. Load balancing is all about making sure no single server gets overloaded, while clustering group servers together to function as one system. Then there's software-defined networking, SDN, which separates the brains of the network, which is the network plane, from the muscle of the network, which is the data plane, to make management more centralized and flexible. Always remember, centralized network management usually points to SDN, and resiliency under server failure usually points to load balancing. Authentication and access control. It's important to master authentication and access control, and there's a good reason. It's at the heart of keeping systems safe. Authentication is about proving who you are, usually through passwords, biometrics, or multi-factor authentication. Authorization, on the other hand, is about what you're allowed to do once you're in. Another common theme is encryption key management, where key escrow comes into play. This allows a trusted third party to securely hold a copy of encryption keys so data isn't lost if an employee leaves or keys are misplaced. Access control doesn't stop there. On the networking side, protocols like 802.1x use radius servers to authenticate devices before they can connect. This works for both wired and wireless networks, making it a go-to for enterprise setups. Federation and single sign-on, SSO, are also common buzzwords. Federation is what allows you to log into third-party apps with your corporate credentials, while SSO usually stays within one organization. Network security and hardening. At the network level, attacks can get pretty sneaky. Understand layer 2 threats like MAC flooding and ARP spoofing. Since these attacks target the data link layer, this involves switches, which are layer 2 devices responsible for traffic management. Another way to harden a network is through segmentation, basically splitting the network into smaller isolated sections so malware can't run wild. It's like having fire doors in a building. Even if one area catches fire, the damage is contained. Firewall rules and access control lists are key. ACLs provide very specific traffic filtering based on user roles or IP addresses, while firewalls often enforce broader traffic policies. Remember the difference between preventative and detective controls. Preventive controls block threats before they happen, while detective controls alert you after the fact. Policies, governance, and compliance. Security isn't just about technology. It's also about people and processes. Policies like acceptable use policy define what employees can and can't do with company resources. This could cover internet usage, email, or how to handle company devices. Compliance also plays a big role in organizations. For example, companies working with cloud providers might want the right to audit clause in their contracts so they can check on security practices whenever needed. If a company fails compliance requirements, it may face sanctions or even lose its license to operate, depending on the severity. Know the difference between assessments versus audits. An external assessment is just a review of controls, while an official audit might be tied to legal or regulatory requirements. These governance topics may feel dry, but they're critical for understanding the bigger picture of cybersecurity. Vulnerabilities and exploits. It's important to recognize common vulnerabilities. Buffer overflows are a classic example. You'll know it's a buffer overflow if you're dealing with long strings of characters, leading to a crash or unintended code execution. Race conditions and logic bombs also make appearances in exams, but the key is to match the symptom to the right vulnerability. For instance, a logic bomb is dormant until triggered by specific conditions, while worms spread quickly without user interaction. Know the differences between static and dynamic analysis when testing for flaws in applications. Static analysis is done without running the code. It's basically reviewing the source code. Dynamic analysis, on the other hand, happens while the application is running, which helps catch issues that only show up at runtime. Security awareness and training. Even with the best technology, people remain the weakest link in security. That's why awareness training is such a big focus. Companies often run phishing campaigns where employees receive fake phishing emails. If someone clicks the link, they get redirected to a training page explaining how to spot fraudulent messages. These exercises aren't about punishing users, but about building awareness and resilience. Training initiatives like this highlight a bigger point. Cybersecurity is a team effort. Employees who know how to recognize social engineering, phishing, or smishing attempts are your first line of defense. Awareness programs also reinforce other security practices, like not plugging in unknown USB devices or reporting suspicious activity right away.